Shabbat Shalom. As a high schooler, in my confirmation class, we read Night by Elie Wiesel. This is his very harrowing, emotional, true account of his survival through multiple Nazi camps, forced marches, near-fatal illness. It's a short book, but it's a very stark book. And we were only in 10th grade. That book shook us. And we were better for it. In 8th grade, Hebrew school, we each got a copy of Mouse. That's Art Spiegelman's graphic novel of his father's survival in Europe during the Holocaust. Now you might think, oh, it was like a comic book. It was, mostly illustrated, very few words. Might be a softer land of that kind of thing. But his depiction of his father and his family's fragmentation, betrayal, destruction, it was almost easier to grasp because it was conveyed to us through pictures. We were 13 years old. That book shook us. And we were better for it. In public school, 7th grade, we read excerpts from the Diary of Anne Frank. I was just shocked to discuss in the classroom with few, if any, other Jewish kids something that was so personal for me and just a sad oddity of history for them. I remember this is burned in my memory. This one kid saying, "It doesn't seem real." And I didn't know what to say. But I didn't have to say anything because we were 12 years old and our only job was to read that book, a book which shook us, and we were all better for it. And if I asked you what these 3 books have in common, you could say they're all about the Holocaust, which is true, or that we usually read them when we're kids or young adults. This is also true. But that's not the most recent thread that binds them. It's that all 3 of these books, Night, Mouse, the Diary of Anne Frank, have all been banned in recent years from schools and libraries around the country. Everywhere from Tennessee to Florida, from Pennsylvania to right here in Texas and beyond, which is offensive to us as a people and worrisome on a number of levels. We Jews are called the people of the book. Our love for them is renowned. Now, usually when people say that, they mean the Torah as the book, but we just kind of love books in general, I think, as Jews. I think we really love learning, opening ourselves up to the world and to each other, learning and sharing about ourselves, hearing each other's stories. There's something divine about it. Our dedication to learning and books is almost holy. And to close oneself off to that is so antithetical to who we are as Jews. The seeds of that are planted way, way early in our people's story, our people's book, if you will. This Shabbat, we begin reading the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar in Hebrew, the book of the Torah that begins, Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe Bamidbar, meaning God spoke to Moses, Bamidbar, in the wilderness, which is a little weird. You might be saying, okay, yeah, Rabbi, okay, God spoke to Moses in the wilderness, like, stop the presses. Obviously, God spoke to Moses in the wilderness. That's where they were, which is true. Remember the Passover story a couple books of the Torah ago? The children of Israel were slaves, and they were free. They get free, and they trek through the desert, the wilderness. Their promised land is in the distance, 40 years in the future, so they trek through the desert forever. Many trials and tribulations along the way. They even get the Torah while they're out there. They get the Torah in the wilderness, so it wasn't all bad. So yes, obviously you're thinking, even at this point in the story, they're still going to be in the wilderness, duh. But there it is. That's the part that should make you go, huh, wait a minute. If they've been in the wilderness pretty much the whole time, it is obvious that that's where God is talking to Moses. God's pretty much always talking to Moses in the wilderness, so why is the Torah bothering to point that out? Remember, the Torah operates on what we call an economy of words. There's no wasted words in the Torah. Whether you think it was written by the literal God with Moses' literal hand, or it's a piece of literature that our people have worked on for thousands of years, either way, it's been refined. There are only necessary words in the Torah. They're there for a reason. So it begs the question, why does it bother specifying in the wilderness when it is so obvious that this is where this conversation is taking place? This sounds like a setup for a bad joke. Two rabbis in the Talmud are having an unrelated argument. One, he's mad at the other guy. He thinks he's going to make him look kind of dumb. And so he says, oh, if you're so clever, how do you answer that question? What does it mean, Bamidbar in the wilderness? If you're so smart, answer me that. So the other guy thinks, and he says, Oseh Adam et atzmo kamidbar. A person who makes themselves kamidbar, like a wilderness, shehu mufkar lechol, open to all, Torah nitlalo. The Torah is given to them. Nachalo el, and they rise to greatness. The Talmud, the ancient Talmud, wanted us to know that it is only by opening ourselves up, mufkar lechol, open to all, that we gain wisdom and understanding. Not just any understanding, Torah level understanding. That's God kind of knowledge there. So it's an element of holiness in there too. And not just that. But when we open ourselves up, so the Talmud teaches, nachalo el, when we open ourselves up to others, it is then that we achieve greatness. And so, the rabbis also teach the opposite must be true. When we close ourselves down to others, this is a place where holiness cannot dwell. And then you'll never be great. The rabbis of the Talmud, almost 2,000 years ago, not Sarah the rabbi of 6 years ago, our ancient sages were exhorting us to remember that we are at our very best when we are open to others, to learning from them. And in doing so, we learn Torah. We learn truth with a capital T. The real stuff. The important stuff. Our Torah and Talmud, our foundational, fundamental Jewish texts, our books, are taking the greatest of pains to tell us of the power of being open to the tapestry of humanity and hearing the fullness of each other's stories, and also the danger of doing the opposite. I think that's why the idea of banning books is so antithetical to Jewish ears. We know, deep down in our kishkas, we know that the best way to know God, to be godly, is to open ourselves up to the experience of all of God's people, not cover our eyes to them, or worse, blind our children and our youth to them. No good can come of preventing children, especially non-Jewish children who don't know us, from learning our people's greatest tragedy in modern times. That kid in my 7th grade class who said of Anne Frank in disbelief, "It can't be real." What if he never had that experience in his formative years, made it all the way through to adulthood, thinking the Holocaust was just too terrible to be believed? As hard as it was for him to swallow, he was better for it. No good can come of any of our youth being blinded to the experience of any of God's children, of every kind under the sun, because there are so very many of us. And we only become better from learning from each other, not worse. In my high school lit class, I read The Color Purple. That is not an easy book to read. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's not easy. That is a book that shakes you. It does not shy away from big topics of race and gender, sexuality. We read it in 11th grade because they felt we were old enough to handle these mature topics. That didn't bother me as much as when we read the Book of Revelations in 12th grade, frankly. Unlike The Color Purple, there was no opt-out alternative reading for that. It was just required. And no, The Color Purple did not cover any experiences that I, as an Ashkenazi Jewish kid, had any firsthand knowledge of. And it was not a warm and fuzzy read. But I don't think all books are meant to be warm and fuzzy, like A Comforting Cup of Cocoa, sweet with extra marshmallows. Some are. Some are. But maybe some are meant to be white hot, to shock you with their fire and burn you with their rage, like so many books about oppressed people, ours included. Our books that are under attack even today. School years are meant to be for expanding the mind, and our libraries to be warehouses of ideas. And to take that away from the next generation is to do them a terrible disservice. As Jews, we know the power of the book, the power of the knowledge and the wisdom that comes in if only you remain open to it, and the greatness that follows. It's not for nothing we've survived 5,000 years, rise and fall, extermination and diaspora. We're still here. Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live, still listening, still learning, and still open to all the goodness that comes with it. Shabbat Shalom.